Welcome to the Jeff Crilley Show. And now, here's Jeff Crilley.
Welcome back to the Jeff Crilley Show. I could listen to this man all day long. He has the most delightful accent. It's a South Texas accent.
Very South Texas, mate. Very South.
John King is my guest. He's the president of Give Them a Voice Foundation. Welcome to the Jeff Crilley Show.
Hey, thanks, mate. Thanks for having us on, and thanks for tackling this topic.
Absolutely. So tell us the story. How did the foundation begin?
Well, it's a very personal story. I was 45 years of age, and I was walking up my backyard, and I had a recollection. And now, up to this point, I'd seen snapshots of my life of different things that had happened to me. But on this 3 o'clock on this one afternoon, it all came together like an old 8mm film. And I had full recollection of being forced to have oral sex with my mother when I was 4, of watching my first pornographic movies at 9 and 11 years old, of being taken to parties by my parents. Apparently I was an attractive kid, and they used to take me to these events and these things. And so what happened is my life literally imploded. It was the onset of a very severe dose of what people would describe as post-traumatic stress. But behaviours had been a challenge up to that point. Obviously, things had been surfacing, but a lot of men who go through something like that, they suppress it. But the mind has a way of saying at some point, you're going to have to deal with this. So between 35 and 45, most guys that have been sexually abused and don't have recall, that's what happens. So in my journey, I started to look for people who could help me. The challenge was I was male, and everything in my area, be it a church group or a community group, a government group, were comfortable dealing with women and talking to girls, but they weren't comfortable dealing with men. I had, in fact, one therapist tell me that I wasn't welcome. I was probably a stalker because all men are abusers. And here I am, and the majority of sexual abuse in my life was perpetrated by a female. So I just started to write poetry, artist therapy, and I just published it anonymously on the web. And I was overwhelmed at the response, not only of men, but of women whose husbands had been abused. And what I found was I was helping form a vocabulary for people to be able to communicate to each other about problems and issues, because I think anybody has a challenge articulating what's happened to them like this. And I think men particularly, when it's not a subject, and I'm not trying to be lacking sensitivity, but we have come to a place where we're prepared to talk about women and girls being abused. We are not comfortable talking about the fact that men are abused. And it's rampant in our society and particularly overseas.
So tell us about your foundation and how does it work to help the...
As a result of what I did with the No Working Title book, and here's a copy for you, mate, but I warn you, it's not PG-13.
Okay.
So lock that away from the small ones. As a result of that, I was approached to be involved in a documentary. And the documentary dealt with the effect of abuse and sex trafficking. And as a result, they couldn't find another guy willing to talk about it. And so they nabbed me, so to speak, poor use of words. And so they got hold of me, and we filmed this documentary, which hits all the festival circuits over the next 12 months and the Oscars next November. So that happened, and at the same time I was approached by another group of guys, and they were Tier 1 operatives that had been involved in rescues and covert gathering of intelligence. So we changed the way, and we talked about the way that how we should position rescuing and the whole raising awareness of sex trafficking and sexual abuse. And out of that grew the Give Them a Voice Foundation.
So if somebody comes to your website, they can obviously donate. But if they're suffering, if they need your help, what happens? Is it confidential? Are there meetings? What do you do?
Everything we do is very confidential. You won't find on our website pictures of people we've rescued or testimonials or stories. The reason being is that if we're going to rescue one person, we rescue all of the people involved. Normally, the sort of rescues we're involved in are very large numbers of boys and girls. Everything's very covert. If you take one and leave the rest, there's incredible retribution for those that are left behind. So we work very covertly. There's really no direct connection between myself and the people that are doing the operations by our choice. In fact, the majority of what we do is gather intel to give to authorities for persecution. We've had 3 people go to trial this year already.
Wow.
And we've got literally dozens in the next 12 to 18 months.
So is it, when we think about sex trafficking, often we think about maybe like a bathhouse or something like that. Is it going on in DFW?
Grapevine Mills is probably one of the greatest areas for sex trafficking in America.
Wow.
I had someone ask me, I was sitting at a business meeting, and someone asked me, what does a trafficking victim look like? And I didn't think about it at the time, but I asked them to show me a photo of their kids. And she pulled out a picture of a very beautiful little 8-year-old girl. And I said, that's what a victim looks like. It's every child. Some people say we're more aware of it now, so that's why we're talking about it. I don't think so. The world has changed. You can't run to the end of your street and play kick a can anymore. It was bad enough when I was growing up. But now every child and every person has got pornography and all sorts of things on their cell phones. They can get at any time, and they're feeding the beast. And it is not just a bathhouse thing. We're talking little girls and boys from 5 and 6 years of age.
Wow.
We're talking lives shattered forever. I'm 53. I've been having sex since I was 4. Think of that way. But now you've got a whole generation of kids that are experiencing exactly the same thing. What is encouraging is I look at the life of William Wilberforce, and if William Wilberforce in one lifetime could bring about an awareness and the end of trafficking of Africans, I just can't see why we can't do the same. And that's the real goal of Give Them a Voice.
So after you remove them from that situation, what kind of counseling is involved? I mean, can a child be healed?
Great question. Thank you. I think that's where we're seeing a difference is because I'm 53. I'm highly functional in all that I do. I do still have challenges, but I'm highly functional. So yes, they can. And for me, it started at 4 as well. So we don't reinvent the wheel. What we are is facilitators. We work very close with the UN, Department of Homeland Securities, with our rescue team, but also with therapists, other authors, clinics. We work very closely with some churches in North Texas to house people and do a range of different things. So we're not in a competition to be the biggest and the best. We know what we're good at, and if we can find someone who's bigger and better than us, then we want the kids to go see them. I'm not a trained therapist. I'm not a counselor. So I want to get these children the help that they desperately need so that they can live a very fruitful life going forward.
I don't want to get too personal, and please forgive the question, but after these recollections came back to you, did you confront your mom, your abuser?
My parents? No, I didn't. They were in Australia. I went back there. We had one trip, and I saw them start to groom my son, and that was the last time I had contact with them. I warned my sister at the time and suggested that I was very frank with her. She remembers things that happened, but unfortunately my little sister suffers from survivor syndrome. There was a choice always presented to me. I could either take the abuse or they would hurt her, and I always took it. So she looks at that and feels very guilty because of that.
Typically, does the abuser threaten or frighten the child into staying silent? How does that work?
Mate, I don't know. They were my parents. You did what you were told.
Right.
So, did I confront them? There's no point. I'm not the sort of guy that asks where was God in the midst of it. I look back and see God very much in the midst of it, especially with the opportunity I've got to help make a difference. If I hadn't have been through what I've been through, then it's possible that these kids wouldn't have an advocate like I can be. So I don't regret any of that. And I suppose in some ways I've given them an opportunity to come clean. And if they had, there was probably a chance for some form of relationship. But they didn't. They weren't prepared to have that conversation. So I made a decision that, if people ask me, I'll just tell them I'm orphaned. Because I honestly don't see how anyone can call themselves parents and do to their child what was done to me.
Wow, this has been one of the most powerful segments that I've ever had the privilege of hosting. How do people get a hold of you? How do they get your book? How do they donate?
If they go to the givethemavoice.foundation website, or they go to noworkingtitle.org. The No Working Title is really a focus on the book. There's a lot of poetry and a range of different things. And givethemavoice.foundation is where they can contact me or give me a call, have a chat. We talk about it. We've got some very large donors. It costs us about $1 million a month.
Wow.
And again, we don't publish any of that sort of stuff on our website. It's all it has to be covert.
John King, president of Give Them a Voice Foundation, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate you.
And we'll be right back.
Thanks, mate.
You're listening to The Jeff Crilley Show on Talk Radio 1190.